That was the plan and the goal from day one. The way it ended up actually playing out was I was intentional about networking all the time when I was in business for junk removal. I was always planning on looking for new events to attend. And I truthfully didn't even know that there was the label of home services when I got into junk removal or that it fell under that umbrella. So, some of the key things to focus on if you're building a business right now and you think you might want to sell it down the road, I think one of the number one key factors is having very, very dialed in financials. I think you absolutely need to hire a professional bookkeeper to get your books in order and make sure that everything is accurate. So accuracy matters when you're talking about selling a business because a lot of the value of your business is going to be based on your EBITDA.
If you guys enjoyed those clips, you're going to love this interview with Jacob. Stick around to the end of the video to capture many golden nuggets when it comes to selling a junk removal business, what it takes to sell a junk removal business, how that process works and what it entails, along with what it looks like to find real estate deals, both using junk removal and just in general, based on where Jacob is now today, where he's full-time in real estate. Stick around, check it out, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. All right, what's up, guys? I got Jacob here. I'm very excited to dive into this interview with you guys. So Jacob has owned a junk removal business, sold a junk removal business, and hopped full-time in real estate. And today we're going to talk about how he made that transition, what opened his eyes to real estate, and what led him to the path that he's on now, where he's full-time in real estate and has sold his junk business. And for those of you who are maybe looking to exit your junk business, I would definitely stick around for the full conversation so you can learn a little about what that looks like. So Jacob, if you don't mind, man, go ahead and introduce yourself, tell the people a little bit about you.
Yeah, cool. Do my best here to provide value to everybody, Blake, and thank you for bringing me back. This is really exciting. So my name's Jacob Espinosa. I ran a junk removal business in Central California for 2.5 years, and we ended up eventually exiting that business, and I transitioned full-time into real estate investing. And it was a direct transition from me finding the opportunities in real estate investing from operating my junk removal business. And I feel like junk removal is a great business to be in. It taught me the fundamentals of running a business. And I think home services in general is just a great space to be in. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity that provided to me.
Absolutely. And as Jacob touched on, we did have him on an interview here about 9 months ago. And this is at the time before you sold the company that you had built, right? So let's dive into that, right? That's kind of the biggest difference between then and now. Of course, obviously the transcendence of the real estate side too, but
For sure.
let's talk about that exit. So that's something that I'm really interested in. I'm sure a lot of other guys are if they're looking to do so either now or in the future. What did that look like and what led up to that?
Yeah. So loaded question there, Blake. But honestly, it wasn't something that was completely out of the blue. When my wife and I decided to start Top Junk, it was our first business we were ever going to start. And when we sat down and decided to do it, we had come to the decision that we were going to build it to sell. And so from day one of the idea being born in our kitchen, we decided that we wanted to build it, structure it, and operate it as if one day we were going to sell it. And the timeline that we set for ourselves was somewhere between 5 to 7 years is what our goal was in order to exit the company. It was always supposed to be something to give me an opportunity to scratch my entrepreneurial itch and really get into the weeds of owning and running a business. And so we wanted to make sure that when we did that, we weren't just creating a high-paying job for me, but we were building something that would one day become an asset that we could actually monetize. So that was the goal from day one. And so we started it out. We developed an operations manual. We developed SOPs as we were building up the company and getting everything started. And we kind of just knew that we were going to kind of hire from the start as it made sense and continue to just put new things in place to make it more operational and continue to just allow me to remove more hats as the business owner as I progressed into that stage. So from day one, the plan was to sell it, but we didn't know exactly when that would be or how everything would play out or if it would even work out at all. So that was the plan and the goal from day one. The way it ended up actually playing out was I was intentional about networking all the time when I was in business for junk removal. I was always planning on looking for new events to attend. And I truthfully didn't even know that there was the label of home services when I got into junk removal or that it fell under that umbrella. But once I found that out, I was able to now find other business owners outside of junk removal that had the same problems as me, that were coming across the same challenges and how they were finding solutions for that and growing businesses even bigger. And so when I started connecting and finding those kind of opportunities, I looked for events to attend, and one of those events happened to be in Arizona about a year and a half into owning the business. And when I was there, I was connecting with a lot of different people and different service offerings. There was gutter cleaners, pressure washers, all the exterior cleaning service guys. There was junk removal guys there. Tons of different, poop scoop businesses, lots of different stuff. And so I connected with a few different people there and I just kind of talked about my business and where we were at and kind of what our plans were and just made a lot of connections. Not long after that, I had a conversation with somebody who was actually looking to do some coaching and some kind of just help other businesses grow, and their specialty was junk removal. And we had a few preliminary conversations, and he was encouraging me to kind of link up with him to take my business to the next level based off where we were at. And we were on the cusp of hitting like the seven-figure revenue mark, but we weren't quite there. There's some things we had to overcome to get to that point. And he felt like in a year we'd be able to attain that with his help. And during that conversation, I had an honest talk with him. Just like I've fallen in love with something new, and my eye's not on the ball anymore here. And it was real estate investing, and I found real estate investing through opportunities of cleaning out other investors' properties in our junk removal business. And so a few more follow-up conversations with that person, they kind of just encouraged me to think about increasing the value of my business if I was going to sell it by increasing the revenue so that, at the end of the day, whoever's going to buy this business is going to pay me more for it if I can hit this benchmark. And I had a decision to make at that point. And I decided that I really wanted to spend my time and my focus on the next venture that I wanted to undertake, which was investing in real estate, flipping houses, wholesaling houses, and building a rental portfolio. And so at that point, when I had that honest conversation and said, my heart's just not in the the aggressiveness that it's going to take. I'm fully capable. I know it. I think that you could help me get there, but I'm not motivated enough anymore to take it to that next level because the extra money I'm going to make isn't going to make the difference in my personal satisfaction. So I decided this is going to be what I'm going to do is I'm either going to run these businesses simultaneously or I'm going to, potentially seek out a buyer, but I'm not 100% sold on that. This person told me that they knew someone who was interested in purchasing a business, a junk removal business within 100 miles of where we were located, and that they were specifically looking for a business that was looking and feeling and modeled after a franchise setup, but they owned their own trucks and they were not under any franchise agreements, and that fit basically us perfectly. We owned two Isuzu dump trucks with 18 cubic yard bins on them. And we had truck team members running out all the jobs. We had virtual assistants booking all of our inbound sales calls, running our dispatch, doing our bookkeeping, and basically running the business for me. So at that point, I was only probably about 25% of my time running the business. And it was as close to turnkey as I could get it with my expertise at that time. And so it was packaged in a way that it was enticing to someone wanting to buy into the home services industry. So after that conversation happened, we were introduced by email to this person who was, curious about buying the business. We had some preliminary talks about my numbers and some other things, and it got pretty serious. And at the time, I wasn't experienced about how businesses are bought and sold. I wasn't very familiar with how that transaction looked or felt like. And I started to feel a little bit out of my depth with the preliminary negotiations that just started naturally happening. And so at that point, I had a conversation with my wife and I said, I think that someone's really serious about buying our business and the numbers that we're talking about are considerable. So at that point, we decided to hire a business broker to come in and represent me, much like someone would represent you when you're buying or selling a house as a real estate agent. And so I learned as I was going that that's how businesses are bought and sold is with real estate or with business brokers. And the transactions happen in an escrow, typically if you're doing it that way. And so there's due diligence periods, there's earnest money, there's contracts. Everything that you do when you purchase or sell a house pretty much happens when you buy or sell a business through a broker. So that conversation that we were having, owner to potential buyer, stopped at that point, and I basically hired representation for me to enter the rest of the negotiations and the rest of the terms for the sale of the business. And I could dive a little bit deeper into that, or however you kind of want to flesh out the rest of that scenario.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about it's interesting that you mentioned it was kind of similar. It was like doing real estate transaction again.
Yeah.
Still in the business. That's pretty interesting. But that process, it sounds like it was built off relationships. So let's talk a little bit about, and I want to dive into real estate stuff too, so I don't want to spend too much time on the sale of the business. I kind of want to let that.
Sure.
But let's talk about, so you mentioned that you had already built the business to sell, right?
Yes.
And that was something that you had in mind right away. So for somebody who's not really sure if they've done that, what are some of the key areas that you focus on to build the business to sell? What are the things you focused on to kind of put it in that position?
Great question. So some of the key things to focus on if you're building a business right now and you think you might want to sell it down the road, I think one of the number one key factors is having very, very dialed in financials. I think you absolutely need to hire a professional bookkeeper to get your books in order and make sure that everything is accurate. So accuracy matters when you're talking about selling a business because a lot of the value of your business is going to be based on your EBITDA effectively your profit. You guys can look a little bit more into that. But basically, what your net profit is on an annual basis is going to be one of the factors that they're going to use to evaluate the value of your company. And so if you have no clue what you're actually netting on a monthly or annually basis, it's going to be extremely difficult to place a value on your business if you're just, saying, well, we do this many jobs or we make this much a month or this much a year and you don't have any bookkeeping to back that up and show your profitability as a business, I think that's going to prevent anyone from having a successful sale of the business. So that would be number one factor is definitely have accurate bookkeeping. The next thing is the structure of your business in general needs to be built like a professional business. And so standard operating procedures, having a handbook, an employee handbook for your team members to follow and keeping those standards alive and well and progressive in your business so that you're always making sure that you're running it like a good, clean, healthy business and you have standard expectations and someone can come into your business and open up that playbook of how to run it and they can plug and play for the most part and kind of take over the reins there in a lot of different seats and be able to plug new people in and continue to grow it. So standard operating procedures and developing those processes for your team and how different functions happen in your business are very important if you're ever looking to sell it and having those all documented. We had virtual team members along with my wife actually fully brand those SOPs and everything, and they were filed away really well. And we just had a nice clean package to deliver to someone to evaluate. And everything was branded as if we were a franchise. And so like it was set up for multi-location by the time we sold. And so that I think helped out a lot when comparing us against, someone else who might say, hey, I've got an operation, I've got Chuck in a truck and I want to sell. A business owner or someone that's an investor looks at that business and then looked at us and we were the spitting image of what they were looking for. So I think that helped out a lot too, is the professionalism of your documentation. And then lastly, I would say is just like is really like running the business for profit and not to stay busy, is charging what you're worth, making sure that your pricing is in accordance with the growth that you're targeting and making sure that you're providing that value. Of course, you can't just ask for the sky and not deliver, but making sure that you're charging the right pricing to allow your business to continue to grow and actually have a profit versus just spinning your wheels trying to keep your guys busy or trying to get jobs every single day. If you're not actually making any money, you don't really have a business to sell. So those would be the things I would focus on.
That would be a major one for a lot of businesses too. They're probably in that and may not even realize that they're in that position right now. So one last thing I guess we'll touch on with that I think will be important, and I'll make it a two-part. We'll dive into the real estate side. So I know people are excited to hear about that. One, could you give us an idea of a range of what that sold for? And two, to bounce off that, if you were to have to go through that process again, what did you learn that next time you sold a business, you would definitely implement? So you're like, man, I wish I knew this while I was selling this because I maybe could have gotten more, or maybe I could build something even better off of this based on what you learned.
Yeah, I could talk for a long time about that, but I would say that if I well, for the sale of the business, to answer your first question, it was a healthy mid six figures exit for us, and it was clean. There was no earnout period. There was no involvement with me staying involved with the business at all. There was a contingency in our agreement for me to stay on to train the new owner for a period of time. I think that looked like 2 to 4 weeks, I think,
That's
and it
pretty
was
common.
yeah, and it was pretty common. That's what I was told, and I was more than willing to do that. I wanted to see them continue to succeed, and so we did that. Other than that, though, it was a clean cash sale exit. The buyer did secure SBA financing actually for our business, and so that leads me into the next part about if I was to ever do this again in selling a business is the time in business. So the amount of time that you've been in business will also affect the valuation. Even if you have a super healthy, profitable business, if it's young, unfortunately, the industry standard is just going to value it less than if you have a longer season in business. And so for us, we were actually right on the cusp of having a higher valuation had I waited, believe it or not, 6 more months. If I had exited 6 months later, I would have likely been able to get more for the business. Luckily, though, even with SBA financing evaluating our business, they still were willing to put a healthy appraisal on the value of it, even though we were under 3 years old. So, had I waited to be over 3 years old, we would have actually been able to probably sell it for higher.
That makes sense. When you think about it, because obviously, you could have there's plenty of businesses that have like really short term success and then fall off over time, or they just
Right.
can't replicate that during a long period of time. So that part makes sense. That's really interesting and unfortunate to be that close. You know what I mean? But it sounds like you guys had a very good exit, and I know you're super happy with what you're doing now, which leads us to the real estate side. So when we talked about 9 or 10 months ago, I don't want to say you were dabbling because you weren't dabbling. You were getting pretty deep into it, but not as deep as you are now, right? So
Right.
let's talk about the differences between where you were at real estate back then and where you're at now. Are you looking for anything different compared to back then? What are some of the things you learned? Let's start there. What are some of the things you learned in the last 9 months now that you're pretty much full time into this?
Yeah, so definitely a lot has changed since the last time I was on with you, Blake. And I'm not 100% certain about this, but I think that I had either just recently sold it or I can't remember exactly where we were at with it, but I don't know if we were still in escrow. What month were we in there interviewing last time? I can't
So
remember.
when we interviewed, I don't even know if you started the sale process of Top Jump, to be honest with you, because maybe you did, you just didn't mention it to me because
The reason I brought it up is because I believe there's a possibility I was in escrow when we did that interview.
okay,
And so I didn't talk about it, obviously, but
okay, all
there's a
right,
period. I think there's a possibility that I was actually in escrow when we talked last.
okay.
So,
It
um,
was like you messaged me about 2 months after our interview that it was sold. It was
yeah, we
right
were in escrow
around.
already. We were in the
Okay,
beginning
all right.
talks. Yeah, we were probably right at the
Little did I
beginning.
know over here in my chair that you were in the process of that.
Yeah. But yeah, the process, once it was closed and done, and I had kind of that freedom to go ahead and take charge in the real estate space. I had already been, like you said, dabbling. My first real estate deal actually came when I had no plans to sell the business yet in terms of anything serious. It came from a lead from a standard junk removal job that we got called for on a Sunday from a landlord who had just evicted her tenant, and she said that she needed to get the place cleaned out. And I had already been pretty removed from the day-to-day operations at that point, but I made it a point to go out and quote that job in person because I wanted to see the house and talk to the owner. And as soon as I got there, I saw that, it was a sizable job, but it was something we could handle in one day. And when I gave her the price, I also let her know, I said, hey, my wife and I are looking to get into real estate investing, and this is a property that we might be interested in. Is there, any possibility you'd be interested in a cash offer to sell this property to me?" And she had a positive reaction immediately, and she said, "Yes, I have multiple rental properties, but this is one that's been giving me problems, and I would be open to an offer if you'd like it." And so we actually completed the job and got paid for it before I even delivered an offer to her. And as soon as we did that, I told her I looked at the property. This is a price that I think I can pay for it if you're open to it. She said, "Let me talk to my husband really quick and get back to you." She called me back within 10 minutes. She asked for maybe five or $10,000 more, and we settled down in the middle. I got it under contract that next day, and then I immediately wholesaled it to somebody that had been kind of coaching me up in the real estate space a little bit peripherally. And I made $12,000 on my first wholesale deal. And it was probably the easiest 12K that I'd ever made in my life. And I probably just got addicted right then and there.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, for obvious reasons, right? Now, with what you guys are doing now, are you still doing wholesaling or has it been a mix? Because you guys had a mix of a couple different things you were doing, right? So let's talk about what strategies that you're currently doing now and
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. So when it comes to real estate investing, you have different exit strategies to monetize an opportunity or a deal. One of them is wholesaling. And maybe I could just summarize really quick for anybody who's not familiar with wholesaling. Wholesaling is basically you're getting a finder's fee for negotiating a deal. And so if Blake's here with a distressed property and I came to him and said I wanted to pay him $100,000 for his property and close in 30 days, he accepts that offer. We sign a simple agreement to purchase that house from him. I have a clause on there that says I have the ability to assign that to another entity. And therefore, now I have the rights to purchase it for $100,000. If I have my friend Bob, who's a house flipper, that's willing to pay $120,000 for that house, I can now assign my rights to this deal or this contract to purchase for 100K to Bob for 120,000. And effectively, when this deal closes now, Blake's going to get his $100,000 he agreed to sell his house for. Bob's going to pay $120,000 to the escrow company to transact that, and they're going to wire me the difference, which is $20,000, and that would be my assignment fee, and I would get that as a net. There's no cost to that at all, so that's a net profit of 20K. So that's a wholesale. So we do that. That's one of our exit strategies. The other exit strategy we do is fix and flip, which everybody's familiar with. We all see HGTV and see everybody that does those crazy, beautiful flips and, all these different areas. And so we do that as well. That comes with a little bit more risk, a little bit more time, a little bit more work. But usually, if you do it the right way, you end up making a sizable amount more money. So it all just comes down to what the property's ARV or after repair value looks like. And then we come down to a decision on what the business needs at the time. Do we need an influx of cash in the next 30 days, or can we delay the payday for, say maybe 3 to 6 months in order to get an increase in profit when we exit the deal? And so if we do that, there's a sizable profit margin that we could capture. If we do a fix and flip, we'll go ahead and do that route. If we need cash in the moment or we've got a full plate of projects going on, we'll go ahead and assign or wholesale that deal to another investor, and we'll take our wholesale fee up front. The third exit strategy that we do, that is kind of that longer term wealth building strategy, is buy and hold rentals, which we've now done. This year to date, I've acquired 9 rental doors in the market that I invest in. And so those are all now cash flowing positively for me. We're working on stabilizing a couple of small multifamily properties, small apartments, and those are for the long-term wealth building. And I can get into how those benefit more than just, cash flow on a monthly basis.
Yeah, you've come a long way. I mean, especially just like over the course of less than a year, just seeing that transformation, you being able to really put your full focus in this. And that's not to say that somebody watching can't do the same thing you did and have a junk real business and utilize it to get these opportunities,
For
which
sure.
we talked about in this first interview. So if you guys are curious kind of how Jacob got into that, there's a lot of feedback in that first interview, and I'll link it here in the description that goes into detail what he was looking for during jobs, how he went about that, stuff like that. For the sake of time, because I know we could talk hours about this,
Yeah, for sure.
and there'd be nuggets out of it. So as we're getting to the end of this year, and again, we might have to do a third one on this, Jacob, because there's so much.
Bye.
But now in the space you're in, right? When it comes to real estate, you mentioned you're doing multiple different things right now. What's your goal for the next, year, 2 years, 5 years? Are you looking into mixing your portfolio with rentals, with doing wholesaling and with flips? Are you leaning into one more than the other? What's kind of your vision for the next year and a couple of years after that as well?
Yeah, so definitely for the next year to 3 years, I would say I'm looking to have a healthy mix of active income coming in from wholesaling and fix and flips while cherry picking the very best rentals to add to my portfolio. And like I mentioned earlier, there's multiple benefits to holding properties as rentals than just the monthly cash flow. And so some of those are the tax depreciation benefits of being able to offset some of the active income. So if you get pretty good at wholesaling and fix and flipping, you can make substantial money. And so with that comes substantial tax liability. And so if you don't have a whole lot of expenses in your business and you're extremely profitable and you're making money, that's a great problem to have, but it doesn't feel great to write a big fat check to Uncle Sam. And so there's lots of different ways that rentals help benefit that. One of them is just, it's called depreciation. You can depreciate the asset that you're holding over a fixed period of time. And every year you're going to take a chunk out of your tax liability of your active income you're making, whether that's from a junk removal business, another business, or from what you're doing in real estate. And you can offset some of those tax liabilities that you would have. Another benefit is obviously someone else is paying down your mortgage. So you're getting principal pay down on the loan that you take out for that property. Someone else is working at their job, at their W-2 to pay down your debt. So that's a great benefit to have. It feels great. On top of that, if depends on what market you're in. If you're in a market like California, like I am, that appreciates really well, then you're also just by holding on to that property, you're gaining in net worth and equity in your property every single year by just holding it. And so you've got all these different ways that your wealth is building by holding that real estate. It's appreciating in value. You're getting principal pay down on the debt that you took out by someone else paying for you. And then you're also offsetting your taxes for everything else that you're doing to make money. And on top of all that, if you did it the right way, you get something called cash flow. And so cash flow is some net number after all the bills are paid and everything's accounted for that you get as retain as profit for you. So there's lots of benefits to holding properties as well.
Someone who's new to this and in the same position as you, running a junk removal business or maybe any home service based businesses and they're seeing these opportunities.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to them in the beginning? Would you recommend that they start with wholesaling because it's less risk and that's kind of getting some skin in the game early on? Or would you recommend them jumping and trying to hold or potentially, fix and flip? Where would you lead them to during kind of the beginning of their path? And then what would there be a timeline to maybe shift that?
Yeah, great question. I think that anybody that's looking to get into real estate investing, especially if they either have a full-time W-2 or they're running their own business right now and they're heavily involved, or even if they're not and they have a profitable business that's running for them, I think wholesaling is a great first transition into it. The reason being is that there's not a lot of capital needs. So that scenario I explained earlier about buying a house from Blake and wholesaling it to Bob the Flipper, you don't need any of your own money to do that at all. So even though I'm promising to pay Blake $100,000, I don't need 100K in my bank account. I just need the means to assign that to somebody else. And I really like to preface the face that you should not be making offers to people that you don't intend to actually make good on. That's what gives wholesalers in the real estate space a bad name. And I personally don't ever do that. If I make an offer, I'm willing to close on the property and flip it myself, but I can always choose to wholesale it if it makes more sense at the time. So I don't recommend people making offers to people that they don't intend to perform on, but it's definitely not capital intensive to get started. The most that you might have to do is something called an EMD or an earnest money deposit to make your contract valid. So once we sign that agreement with Blake for 100K, I can put something as low as $100 as our earnest money deposit, go deposit that at the title company, and now I have a valid agreement that no one can take away from me. So wholesaling, definitely a first great step into it. If you're making pretty good money in your business and you feel like you're looking for a way to invest and wholesaling doesn't seem like the fit that you would want to, take off with, I think that buying rentals could also be a way to get your foot in the door with real estate investing. It would just mean that you would need to spend some time making sure that you understand what a good deal looks like, doing a lot of research about how to buy at the right price, how to manage a property. real estate is not passive. I say that all the time. Even buying, holding rentals is not a passive game. It is an active game and it will become a part-time job, even with one property. So you can put property management on these and you can budget for that to have someone else manage the property for you. But there will still be times where you need to invest your own time and energy into managing the project. And so I would just be aware that, don't look at it as something that's just going to be like a set it and forget it type of a setup. You definitely are still going to need to spend time paying attention to your asset.
And I got a question about sort of the wholesaling, and you can let me know if this is true or not. It sounds like you, and I think you're smart to tell people to not do this. Like, if you make an offer, be willing to actually go through with your offer. Do they not have a thing with wholesaling where you actually can get in writing that if you're not able to pass on the sale, that you would like fall back on that, and that's why you mentioned that?
Can you explain that one more time when you say fall back?
Yeah. So for instance, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but someone could technically make an offer, but then have it a contingency that says like if they're not able to pass it off, that the offer is not valid, and that's why you would mention that.
Yes,
Correct.
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
so we have a simple two-page off-market real estate agreement that when we make an offer on a property, there are contingencies in place, and one of those for us is that it's subject to financial partner approval, and your financial partner approval could be the investor you're looking to assign it to, or it could be somebody like your private lender or your hard money lender evaluating the deal. And if you're not able to secure financing for the property and it's no longer a good deal, or you uncover more repair work than you originally thought when you made the offer, then you have a right to cancel that agreement and you can retain your earnest money deposit. Your EMD can come back to you. So even if you risk $100 or $1,000 on an earnest money deposit, if you're unable to assign the deal for one reason or another, or you didn't make an offer that made sense, you can go ahead and cancel that agreement and then you can get your earnest money deposit back. So yeah, even that's not at risk.
Okay, that makes sense. But again, coming to this game, understand that, like, look, when you make an offer, obviously you want to be able to satisfy that offer and move forward, right? Like, you
Yeah,
know,
for me, integrity is everything.
yeah,
I was trained by a mentor in this business that integrity matters, your reputation matters, being able to sleep well at night matters. And what the last thing we want is a bunch of people that are just completely, throwing out crazy offers, tying up properties for no reason with no intention to actually perform on those offers. It just gives the industry a lot more of a challenge to continue to grow. And we don't like to have bad operators. So if you're making offers, you want to make sure that you're making an offer in good faith. And obviously we all make mistakes and no one's going to be perfect, but you don't want to just be making an offer just to do it.
absolutely, especially understanding some of the situations these people are in, right? I can tell you
100%.
firsthand, like my mother, my grandfather passed, and I mean, we had to clean out the property. It was kind of more of
Oh
a
yeah.
whole situation, and to be in that position, most of them, like, it's very emotional, it's hard, it's challenging,
Yeah.
and you want to do right by those kind of people, right? You don't want to be making offers that you can't fulfill. So, me and you were similar and like-minded in that way. I think if you're going to jump into this game, you definitely can, but do it the right way, just like you would anything else.
Agreed. Well said, Blake.
Well, all right, man. I mean, I would love to talk more, but I know with YouTube, it's best for us to keep it right around this mark. I think, honestly, man, in the next month or two, let's hop on and do one more of these. I think people are going to
Absolutely.
love the information they got out of this, and we could probably dive a little bit deeper into like, hey, what are you looking for a hold? What are you looking for a flip? What's the difference between the two? And you deciding which one is which for you, right? I think those are valid questions that we could dive into. And not only that, but see your journey because you're moving so quick, man, that in a month or two, you might have so many more gems that you don't have currently under your belt that you can unleash for us. So I really appreciate you hopping on here, man. It's always a pleasure having you. Congratulations once again on the sale of the business and being able to move full time in real estate. And I know you're gonna continue to crush it because you literally are just getting started. So I'm
Yeah,
pumped for you,
it's
man.
It's crazy, but thank you. I appreciate you bringing me back. Just want, to make clear that I always have the go-giver mentality. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, I'm always happy to share, a little bit more about what it is that I did to get here, how I can help someone else get started. The go-giver mentality for me has always been something that's served me well, and so just like to give back, provide value. I'd love to do another call with you so we could dig deeper into, what we can do to provide some more value on the details and some of the nitty-gritty parts about real estate investing. I'm an open book.
Absolutely, and I'll put your some of your information in the description for anybody who wants to reach out and
Cool.
maybe touch base for you. Somebody who's in a similar position in junk removal, maybe somebody who just wants to dive into real estate, whatever the case may be. I think you're a gem, man. You got a ton of information already, and you're only going to know more. So I think that would be something I'd recommend to most people to watch this.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Blake.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for being on here. Thanks everybody for watching. And again, I guess look forward to another video with Jacob and I here in the next month or two so we can dive a little deeper into this topic for everybody. Thanks for watching, guys. If you guys enjoyed this interview with Jacob, I would love if you could leave us a thumbs up in the comments. That helps us understand that this is the kind of content you want to see. And moving forward, we can continue to do interviews just like this. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys on the next video.